Hey patrons, welcome to your weekly Creep Cult bonus episode. This week we are continuing with our Alphabet Roulette and talking about Gremlins 2, The New Batch. But before we dive into our discussion, we do want to let you know that we are trying out some new mics, as you can see on our collar, I guess, our lapel area.
Yeah.
And so there might
our
be some...
Arnicular region.
It might sound a little bit different, so please bear with us while we try to figure these out and adjust accordingly.
Yeah, the main episode will contain our normal microphones and our normal audio quality.
You're getting the shit.
No, so we are trying our best to make this sound as close as humanly possible, and doing this in this platform helps us by getting feedback from y'all, and also in our efforts to have something to edit that we can try to make sound like our old stuff, right?
And I've never agreed with this, but John has always kind of referred to our patrons as lab rats anyway, or guinea pigs sometimes, I've heard you say.
Guinea pigs are cute.
Yeah, guinea pigs are cute. So thank you for being patient with us.
Talking to you, Steven.
Hopefully at least
Patron.
Yeah, I mean, actually, shout out to Steven. He did message me this week on the Instagram and say that he's really enjoying the Alphabet Roulette and that he loves the different conversations we've been having, and that he is a massive fan of Gremlins 2.
Yeah.
And I said, me too, buddy. Me too.
I think that this really solidified that for me as well.
Yeah, so do we want to get into
The meat and potatoes
about it?
that they shouldn't be eaten after midnight?
Again, directed by Dainty Joe Dante.
Yeah.
Although the first one was written by the old Chris Columbus, he could not write this one because he was too busy working on Home Alone.
Can't be mad about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like, okay, I get it. Checks out. But it's so weird that Chris Columbus's thing is like, yeah, let's make a Christmas movie, but let's twist it. Because he's like, what, 3? That's 3 now? What if it had magic? What if he was Home Alone? What if there were monsters?
Yeah, I think Chris Columbus.
What if we did all 3?
I always. It's funny because with Christopher Columbus, I'm like, fuck that guy. Like, we all turned against Christopher Columbus. Chris Columbus, though, I think there needs to be more attention placed on how big an influence, at least on my life, he's been, without me even really connecting the dots. Because, yeah, Home Alone, Gremlins, the Harry Potter movies, there's 10 million Chris Columbus things. Where he is just the master, outside of maybe a Spielberg, of the warm fuzzy. And I think that is, like I was telling you last night, these two movies, I usually have a hard time deciding which is my favorite of the two, because I'm a sucker for Christmas movies. So I especially like a Christmas with a dark twist. So I love the first Gremlins.
This is something different, though.
It's a new batch.
Yeah, it really is.
And the story behind this is really cool because it just never fucking happens anymore. But the studio really, really wanted there to be a sequel to Gremlins because it was very successful.
And Joe Dante said, we can't think of anything, fuck off.
Well, he was just like, we told our story and we don't need to make any more. And they were like, cool, we'll just make it without you. And then spent a few years trying to make a Gremlins 2 and could not crack it. They talked about sending the Gremlins to Mars.
I saw that.
Yeah, and then eventually they came back to him and he said, okay, I'll do it under the condition that I can do whatever I want. Complete creative control. And you can tell, like, from the very first Looney Tunes thing that pops up in the movie, that this is, like...
a very different movie.
Well, and it feels like it's... Because I've seen some other Joe Dante stuff, and this feels like a distillation of, like... He was just like, I'm going to pour my entire spirit into this movie. And he even said in interviews, this is the most, like, just him on screen. All of the things that he loves and his influences. So yeah, you find out right off the bat with this that Looney Tunes is probably the biggest inspiration throughout the whole movie.
Do we know, did this movie do well when it came out? Did it get bad reviews or perform well? Because I read somewhere that Dante was saying, like, part of the reason that this movie was the way it was because he thinks that they just missed the ball.
Waited too long.
Release, yeah.
Yeah, I can look to see, like, budget versus how much it made. But yeah, I don't think it was nearly as big a hit as the first one, and I think people don't remember it as fondly as the first one. I think a lot of people, like, even I as a kid was like, I stay away from the new batch. The budget was 30 to 50 million, and it made 41.5 million, so not too
total,
great.
like worldwide?
U.S. and Canada.
Oh, okay. So maybe some more.
Well, yeah,
Yeah,
I mean, it's
and also
a huge
through
difference, like production-wise. Like, I mean, this is a very dark, like, black comedy like meta, like it really digs into like what ended up becoming like a 90s staple, which is really the meta comedies that like take shots at the studios that make them
or the critics.
Yeah.
He's taking shots at anyone who he can take shots at, which is everyone, and it's great. It's like what I think is incredible about this movie is that every single fucking frame of this has a joke. There's something funny going on or clever, whether it's like a background gag with some scientists in the building or the constant like intercom.
Oh my god! It's like we're experiencing something. Please try not to notice.
Yeah.
It's cracking up.
And just every line out of everybody's mouth is some like riff on the studio or a riff on the first Gremlins, and also some of my favorite sequels are the ones that are playing around with like the image of the first movie and don't just try to do the same movie again. And obviously that's something that Dante was not even remotely interested in doing, was just copying Gremlins again.
This breaks the sequel rules big time.
Yeah, and you talked about it being similar to like Evil Dead, where the first one's a very straightforward horror movie, and then the second one's like, oh, you liked that? Let's flip it on its head and let's kind of make fun of the like gory, crazy, off the wall horror stuff. And then this one's like, oh, you liked that first one? Let's take everything about it and turn it on its head. Let's actively make fun of the first movie. There's the scene, which is probably my favorite in the movie, of Billy trying to explain to all the guys at the consoles the rules of the Gremlins, and they're all asking, these are direct questions that fans asked after the first one that they just incorporated into the script of like, oh, well, what if the Gremlins or the Mogwai are in a plane and they fly through into a different time zone?
Say it's always midnight somewhere.
Yeah, and then the Gremlin just pops out and starts eating the guy.
Loved it, yeah.
It's great, but for anybody who maybe hasn't seen this in a while, the basic premise is that Billy Peltzer from the first one and Phoebe Cates' character, whose name I forget off the top of my head, they've moved to New York. I'm not 100% sure how much time is supposed to have passed between the two, but a little while. And Billy is now working as a designer for the Clamp Corporation, which, again, this keeps happening to us. Movies that are even more relevant now than they were when they came out, because Clamp is very obviously a riff on Trump. Even the name Clamp.
Yeah.
And then the Clamp building and the way he looks is, I mean, Donald Trump's a lot uglier than John Glover, but even
no relation.
Yeah, even the style and everything, like it's he's supposed to be Trump mixed with Ted Turner.
Okay.
And but mostly Trump. And they even there's even a deleted scene where one of the characters like off screen says, "Oh, Clamp would make a great president."
Weird.
So so you have this Donald Trump guy. He runs this like smart building where everything is automated, everything talks to you, and of course that means that when the Gremlins get involved, shit's gonna start going haywire. And that's a detail that I really liked about the first one that I didn't think they carried over into this one, is that even before the Gremlins start showing up, everybody's the tractor and all the different like machinery is having issues. And that goes back to like Gremlins originally. The idea of a gremlin during like wartime, or in that episode of Twilight Zone, is supposed to be like just a slang term for like when you have something messed up mechanically or electrically. It's like, oh, there's a gremlin in the machinery. And so that's a thing that persists through this movie, is just like the power starts flickering out and they start having these brownouts and shit just starts going haywire all over the building. And I was like, oh fuck, this is even smarter than I remembered it being, where they're like, okay, we'll put the Gremlins into an automated building so that we can fully take advantage of them like fucking up all of the equipment. Then they're like, what if we threw in a genetics lab too?
Just so that we can get every type of gremlin. And I had forgotten how or why they became other types of gremlins. And then I was like, oh, okay, so they just happen to have a bottle for every wacky shit that was pitched in the writer's room.
So we got a brain gremlin. We got a lady gremlin.
Yeah.
We got an electricity gremlin.
And I guess that mostly comes from the effects artist who worked on the first Gremlins didn't want to return for this one because he was doing effects and directing The Fly 2, which is not a very good movie. But he was working on that. So Dante wanted Rick Baker, the obviously very, very famous, legendary Rick Baker, to do the effects. And he said, no thanks, I don't want to put that much work into something that somebody else invented. And Dante was like, okay, well, what if I said you could make them all different and get crazy with their designs and like make them all really personalized? And he said, okay, that interests me. And so he really went to town on having a bunch of different Mogwai, because in the first one, when the Mogwai pop out of Gizmo, they pretty much all look like Gizmo, and they're all pretty much the same. And then the same with the Gremlins when they turn into Gremlins. They all pretty much look the same, except for Stripe's got the stripe. In this one, as soon as they pop out, you have the googly-eyed one, the buck-teeth one, the evil-looking one, and
the not Spike.
The not Spike. I think he's well, I think he was Stripe in the first one, and he's Mohawk in this one. Stripe, yeah. And and then they further evolve into all of these different variations, which we always, there's the excellent Key and Peele sketch about how they pitched this movie. They even have an electricity gremlin.
It's great. Yeah, and it nails it on the head. I think what you were talking about earlier, looking at Evil Dead, I feel like the first Gremlins, although it does have funny parts, is mostly a horror movie. Mm-hmm. And this, to me, is mostly a comedy.
Yeah.
With horror elements. And more toward the end, you get a little bit more horrific, like with the spider stuff. But for the most part, this is a comedy. And I'm okay with it. I'm okay with it switching gears. I don't know how people felt about it at the time.
If you went in expecting to get more of the same, I could imagine being pretty upset. But I think that a modern audience is more prepared for a sequel to take a violent left turn in a different direction.
Yeah.
And
they kind of set you up, giving you the Looney Tunes intro, like, here's so you know this is going to be something different.
And that was the intention of including that, was to let everybody know right off the bat this is a comedy. And it's
right off the bat, Gremlin.
Well, right off the bat, Gremlin.
Okay. It's in the movie.
Fucking genius, man. Genius. We should have a brainy Gremlin that talks in a fancy voice. We should get Tony Randall to voice him.
It's so good, too. Yeah. Like, I forgot about a lot of this.
We want the same things that everyone wants. Civilization.
Well, that's not civilized.
Yeah, I was like, ooh, did Joker rip that off when he just pops going Gremlin? But, yeah, I mean, I think this is definitely a much more of a cult classic vibe going on than the first one, because the first one, like you said, is a pretty straightforward Christmas time creature feature.
Yeah.
And this is a satire, and also if you haven't seen a bunch of the movies that this is referencing, like, I think it gets more enjoyable the more recognizable the references are to you, and obviously
like Christopher Lee, for example, his presence in general, and then him being like the horror.
Yeah, and then when the Bat Gremlin like first shows up, and then it like actually plays music from his Dracula, and he's like has this look like deja vu. There's also a deleted extended part of that where he talks about like, oh, I hear they sometimes feed on blood. And
I was hoping that we were gonna get something.
Yeah, so
that's funny.
There's just in every scene, there's an homage to something. Gizmo's whole arc throughout this is straight up just First Blood, Rambo, down to the headband and everything, and they play Rambo music. There's obviously
which I read like Stallone signed off on.
Yeah, which is cool that they had to.
He was like, "Fuck it."
Yeah.
Yeah, I found somebody. This isn't even a complete list by far, but I found somebody on Letterboxd put together a list of movies that are referenced in Gremlins. So yeah,
holy shit.
Rambo, Casablanca. I fucking love that part where it's like, tune in tonight for Casablanca in full color and with a happier ending. Gremlins, obviously. Batman, when the Bat Gremlin flies out and makes the bat symbol. Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, Phantom of the Opera, the one Gremlin gets the acid in his face and he does the entire Phantom of the Opera bit.
For no reason to. And I think that's where this movie is really funny. It's just shit happens and it's like, why? Like that? Why? Just to make you laugh. Like it is just a movie to make you have fun.
Yeah, and if you try to think about it for even a second, none of it makes any fucking sense.
But neither does Gremlins.
Neither do Gremlins, yeah. And that's why they make, they're obviously... Because the gears started turning where I was like, well, if the Gremlins were just born, like, how do they already know how to, like, make pop culture references? And it's like, it doesn't fucking matter.
Yeah.
It's for the bit.
You're missing the point.
There's a classic Godzilla and King Kong references, like the little Daffy Gremlin that Phoebe Cates accidentally takes home is, like, sitting up on the file cabinet with planes, like, doing a little King Kong thing. You got Beast from 20,000 Fathoms on one TV. Christopher Lee walks in with one of the pods from the original Body Snatchers.
Okay, and I was like, is that? And I was like, I don't know. Is he in that? Or he just has the pod just to be.
I think it's just to be a reference because they're watching Body Snatchers in the first Gremlins, and I think it's a reference to the first Gremlins.
How funny!
They even have the bit where the one Gremlin is like angry when he sees a microwave because the one got cooked in the first one. It's like so then I started thinking, well, do they have some sort of weird genetic memory that's tied to Gizmo? And then like, stop thinking too deeply into this. You're not meant to.
That scene's good too when the woman toasted the show, and then she's like, I put a little bit and then a little bit for me. She just like keeps drinking the whole time. I was like, real smooth lady. It's like you said, everything has a little joke in it, and they don't play it like directly in your face all the time. Sometimes yes. But other times it's like that, where it's like, I'm just going to get hammered while I'm doing this cooking show or things like that. And it's a good time. And we got the Dracula guy. Christopher Lee.
Yeah, who's like...
the actual Dracula. Well, I guess they're both. I don't know how to say it.
Yeah, he's got a bit of a, like a Munsters vibe going on.
He is it.
I think he was Grandpa Munster, yeah. So he's basically doing a Munsters thing, which I loved because... So, yeah, you get your little horror... reference there, and then a ton of this lighting is very like giallo, garish, like 80s horror looking stuff, and then obviously a ton of Looney Tunes references throughout the entire movie. I guess Chuck Jones, who was the original creator of most of the classic Looney Tunes, he had been in retirement and actually came out of retirement to animate and direct the sequences at the beginning and the end of this. So that's super cool. Dante was just like, I'm going to break every single rule in the book, because then you even have that thing in the middle that obviously Daniels went on to use successfully also in Everything Everywhere, where the movie stops. And I always forget which part of the movie that's going to happen in. So they're in the middle of their little conversation, John Glover and Billy, and then it is like, and it goes off, and then you have the whole thing with Hulk Hogan, which is like one of the things that feels a little dated about this movie, but still pretty funny.
Restart the movie, brother.
Yeah, and then they have is it Leonard Maltin?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, who actually did give a bad review to the original Gremlins, but agreed to make the cameo. And then for his review of Gremlins 2, he gave it 3 out of 4 stars and said, yeah, but there's a pretty ridiculous, like, garish cameo in it, and didn't mention that it was him. But he's like, yeah, there's a pretty ridiculous cameo in there.
Funny.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, so you have that whole bit, and then I didn't know this, but when it was released on VHS, they actually changed out that segment to instead be like channel static, with the Gremlins doing like shadow puppets over channel static as they were flipping the channels, and it was a whole different bit centered around if you were watching it on home video.
I read that people were returning it to the video store before it picked back on, and like, yeah, this tape's broken, like, so people were pissed.
Yeah, the studio definitely didn't want to do that bit at all in the movie, but it was just because in test screenings people thought it was hilarious and stuck through it. That you know, I can't imagine being. With the film messing up, I can totally understand if people got up and were like, hey, you know, something's wrong with the projector. But
it's quick, isn't it? Like, how long is it out? Like, if you're in the theater and that happens.
Well, and you immediately see the Gremlins start coming out, so I don't know how long you would need to be confused for that to actually be a problem. But studios also just don't like anything that's interesting or funny or original. So
the effects on this movie are fucking fantastic.
Yeah, so that's the other thing that I think makes this, in a lot of respects, stand out above the first one, is that the first one, just because of the limitations of what they were able to do with the puppets, you only ever have like a few Gremlins on screen at once, and for the one big shot where they have all the Gremlins marching down the street, it's a little stop motion and then kind of like in shadow, so you can't really tell. In this, they have just a million Gremlins everywhere, not to mention how detailed the Gremlins are on top of this. You get the added little lore thing of like those disgusting fucking bubbles they form that have like mini Gremlins inside that pop out. And
yeah, that was hell gross.
Gizmo is so much more like emotive and more of a character in this one, and you see a lot more of him and the Gremlins just like walking around and doing stuff.
I'm sure that's technological improvements, and then obviously someone like Rick Baker being involved. I mean, being one of the icons of the
effects.
Yeah, effects and everything.
Yeah. So that stuff like
industry is the word I was looking for.
Effect industry. Combined them.
Well, I told you guys
Friendship.
it's a really interesting pairing because to me this is like it's somewhere near the pinnacle of practical effects, just in terms of the scale of the practical effects and the detail of all of the effects and everything. And then we're talking about War for the Planet of the Apes in our main episode, and that to me, outside of now, Way of Water is probably the best looking in terms of CG effects, both Weta, so it totally makes sense. But so it's just really cool to see two types of effects working at just like their optimal best level. But yeah, I mean, even just I could go on forever about just like how many bits in this that I think are just fucking hilarious. When Christopher Lee goes up and asks the one guy like, "Oh, hey, how are the cloning experiments going?" And then his twin turns around and he's like, "Great, sir."
The dude from Terminator 2.
Yeah.
I was like, hey.
Great to see those twins popping back.
I know that guy. What were some of your highlights?
I mean, like I said, I just love how it's just mile a minute. Like even if there were pacing issues with the story, like there's always something to keep you entertained. I think that looking at like modern movies, like we just watched the Super Mario Brothers movie, and that movie is similar in a way where there's always something for you to be looking for. But this is like, it's not tied down to any one property or project. If you are like us, a fan of cinema in general, especially things that lean more towards horror, you will find like tens, if not hundreds of things in this movie that you're like, you're making the meme. You're Leonardo DiCaprio pointing at the TV.
I feel like I find at least 10 every time I watch this. Like one that I haven't even seen the movie, but I've seen the scene pop up in like a YouTube video or something. But when they have the one gremlin has Billy like in the dentist chair, and I made the joke earlier where he's like, "Is it safe?" That's a Marathon Man reference, because there's a scene where Dustin Hoffman is like getting his teeth drilled into, like getting tortured. Just all those little things where it's just the more movies you've seen, the more like bang for your buck you're gonna get out of this movie.
What did you guys think about the actor that played Billy, his acting?
Oh, Zach Galligan?
Yeah. What'd you think, John?
I like him and Phoebe Cates just because I do think they're charming and they're sweet, and they don't really need to do more than that.
He's pretty flat in this. I don't remember him being that flat in the first one.
Well, I think
but
that's...
He's always like, hey, no, it's okay.
Ain't nothing flat about Phoebe Cates.
You know what I'm saying?
Hey! I feel like they both don't really get much to do in this movie, and it's because I don't think Dante was really interested in focusing on them. The Gremlins are the stars of the movie,
and they
are the stars of the movie.
In the first one, it was, Billy's obviously the main character, and it's about his story, and you get his whole family, and the neighbors show up in this, and they have a bit of an extended thing. I love the cement covered bat one turning into a gargoyle. That's great, and I love that the neighbor, who a lot of people thought had died in the first one, because they have like the snowplow come through their house, and you think that they've been killed by the Gremlins. No, it turns out they survived. But I love when he has that moment where he's like, "I'm not crazy. Like the Gremlins are real," and
goes into a secret elevator.
Yeah, but really they're not really the focus of the movie. I feel like Gizmo, even for the most part, gets sidelined in this movie compared to the first one.
Gizmo's cute. Like people enjoy like watching the original Gremlins partially because Gizmo is adorable, right?
That's why they enjoy watching The Mandalorian, is because Gizmo's adorable.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
But this movie isn't really about being adorable. This movie is about being funny. And it succeeds in that like wholesale.
Yeah, and nobody but yours truly can be both, right?
What?
Adorable and funny.
Okay. Here's an interesting connection. Billy's boss, the redheaded woman, is the mom from Home Alone 3.
Because this is not the first like random Home Alone 3 or 4 trivia you brought to the table. It's just,
I don't know 4.
Okay.
And I almost brought Home Alone to the table today.
Oh,
and
really?
I was like, well, I was going to make you guys watch Home Alone 4. And I was like, no, because I don't want to do that.
I've seen all of them, but like the Home Sweet Home Alone or whatever the new one is.
There's 4 or 5.
Yeah, I've seen all of...
Is there 6?
I've seen at least the first 4, but have no memory of any of them past 2.
I like 3.
Yeah.
I'm a fan. But yeah, she's the mom. And I was like, that's funny because obviously, the light Home Alone connections.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Business.
But I think that John Glover's performance is great. He stands out.
Yeah, I mean, and you think that he's going to be kind of this, like, industry dick, and he ends up being, like, a weirdo, but also kind of a nice guy.
That's where he deviates entirely from Trump. And that's why I think some people wouldn't maybe pick up on the comparison. But, he was written to be just a straight-up villain.
Yeah.
And Glover was like, well, I kind of want to play him as more of, like, a kind of an idiot, like, but...
I'm so used to him being a villain that I was like, what's your angle, Luther?
Yeah. It's nice to see him being kind of, like...
Nice.
Yeah, it was cool. I think he's great. Christopher Lee is great.
Yeah.
I guess there was just a huge amount of respect for him all over the set.
As there should have been.
Everybody was just in awe of his...
I think it's cool that he did it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and his character's name is Dr. Cushing Catheter. Cushing being a reference to
Yeah,
Peter
Peter
Cushing,
Cushing.
obviously, and catheter being the thing you stick in your pee-pee.
It's a weird fucking movie.
It's a trip.
Yeah, and the whole
I mean,
time I was like, what
we're
is this?
we're back to back, maybe two of the weirdest like studio films that have ever been made in Hollywood.
What was last week?
Face Off.
Oh yeah. I feel like if they made a new Gremlins, there would definitely be a Face Off reference.
So Red Letter Media, I'll credit them for this idea because I'm sure Steven is going to be listening and he'll call me out if I act like it's my idea. But they said that they wanted to see, they were like the perfect sequel would be bring Clamp back, have him be president, have the Gremlins get loose in the White House.
Oh, right on.
I think it'd be tight.
Yeah.
My idea was...
Dude, imagine them having control over the nuclear weapons.
Yes.
My idea would be to follow what Evil Dead did and go back in time and do like an ancient Gremlins.
Oh, or like Ninja Turtles 3, Turtles in
Yeah.
Time.
Yep.
Exactly like that.
Yeah.
More
Well,
of a secret of you.
Because isn't Gizmo, is he from China? Or, because the story, it's like a...
yeah, I'm pretty sure the
Story
idea is
Chinatown.
that the Mogwai species is from China,
Yeah.
but we're going to find out more about that in the Secrets of the Mogwai show that HBO Max is doing.
And
'Cause-
Howie Mandel refused to come back.
Really?
Yeah, I'm like,
Just use the same fucking audio from the previous
Yeah.
ones. It actually creeps me out that I know it's Howie Mandel, and I try to forget that.
Yeah, I forget every time.
Yeah, while I'm watching it, and I know that's the thing with all of your favorite lovable, squealy animal characters. They're always voiced by like an old dude. Like whenever you watch Avatar, Appa and Momo, that's all voiced by the same like dude. You know, it'll be Tom Kenny or something. You know. And or Frank Welker, he's like 80 something years old and still doing the voice of Fred and Scooby in Scooby-Doo, and he's
cow.
like the original Fred voice in the original Scooby-Doo. He did some voices in Gremlins too.
Right
So
on.
it's just, but yeah, it's a great movie. If you haven't seen it, definitely check it out. And yeah, I'm really interested in the Secrets of the Mogwai thing because yeah, it's supposed to be a prequel to the first Gremlins set in China, but I said
but
I
with
don't.
Gizmo?
Yeah, that's why I don't think it's ancient China. I just know that he's going to be palling around with a Chinese kid in
Okay.
China. So
Yeah, I think
know
B.B.
it's...
Wong's going to be in it. It has some pretty big names in it.
Yeah, the guy who played the shop owner in this, he since his character is no longer around after this movie, he told Joe Dante, he was like, well, remember, if you make a third one, I can be in flashbacks. And then sadly he passed away pretty quickly after this movie in real life. But
I hear rumors of a 3. I don't know if it'll ever happen though.
Galligan's been talking about it for years now. Every time he does a big interview, he talks about how they have ideas and how one of the darker ideas they had was exploring, okay, well, if Gizmo continues to be the source of these gremlins getting loose, do we need to kill Gizmo? And have it be like a really dark take on what to do with
Not
this
that it's
thing.
Gizmo's fault. He's not pouring water on himself.
Dude, I
You know
always
what I mean?
feel like I get so emotional every time he gets hit with the water and like because he like squeals and like looks like he's in so much pain and then all these things and he knows what's about to happen and I'm like, oh, I feel so sorry for the little dude. But
Poor guy.
yeah.
Poor little Gizmo.
I love Gizmo.
Yeah.
He's great. All right, we're doing H next. H,
H.
if you will.
Let us know what's on the wheel of endless possibilities.
Endless possibilities.
All right.
So, Tone brought Happy Death Day to you.
Yep. Do I got 2 slots?
Yeah, 2. And then
Oh, you got Spinnegans.
yeah, and then Anthony went with House, the one from 77.
Yep.
The Japanese film. It's supposed to be wacky.
The trippy one.
Yeah. And then I went with Hell House LLC 2, The Abandoned Hotel.
Ooh, it's been one. Is it Abandoned or Abaddon?
Abaddon Hotel, whatever.
You
I'm
totally
reading,
really
I'm reading it
dedicated to his
sideways.
pick.
That's
reading
okay.
it sideways.
I'm
I've also
making
never
sure.
seen this one.
I like it, I think, as much as the first.
I was actually surprised you didn't bring this to the table. I was convinced you were going to bring one of the Hell House sequels to the table.
I brought it.
Oh my
I did it, and I'm gonna.
I honestly forgot to pick a movie until like 15 minutes before you guys got here.
Oh, I have a long ass list of so many H movies,
H
but wanted to pick one that I actually am very interested in seeing.
I'm good with all these this week.
This spin it. Oh,
You gotta spin it to win it. Round and round she goes. No whammies. No. You're due for one, huh, John?
the last one was mine.
Oh.
But we are going with mine again, so we'll be watching Hell House LLC 2, The Abaddon Hotel.
Woo!
Stay tuned for some creeps, some spooks.
It's gonna be scary.
I still might watch House.
It's
Yeah.
going to be scary.
I'm definitely just going to watch House.
The lights off one. You gotta set the mood for these Hell
Yeah.
House movies.
Yeah.
Right
Well,
on. I'm looking forward to it.
Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for we'll be listening to this. So no need to comment if this audio sucks.
We
You know,
do
just keep it to
apologize, but
yourself.
contrary to that, please let us know what you think,
Yeah.
so we can see if we can use these more regularly.
Yeah, or if you have any advice, if you're somebody who knows audio, let us know. But we're experimenting. We got big things coming that we cannot reveal. So
Either way, thank you so much for checking this episode out. And if you haven't already, please check out our main episode where we are talking about War for the Planet of the Apes.
Apes together.
dong.
See you next time.
Keep it creepy.